long-haul services out of Christchurch for those same reasons. We have one flight that comes in from Japan via Christchurch to Auckland, which is actually driven more from our air service agreement with Japan and an arrangement we have with Japan Airlines that requires that to happen. Otherwise we would fly that service direct into Auckland as well.
Yep, hi Rob. Just wondering, you talk about the value to New Zealand, obviously being New Zealand. For the average consumer, they're probably not aware of that.
Yeah.
Why hasn't New Zealand gone down the road of Kiwibank and sort of gone with New Zealand ownership, the profit staying here, keeping New Zealanders working, especially when you're facing Australian competitors here in domestically?
Yeah, I think Kiwibank have actually done a tremendous job with doing that. We made a conscious decision, rightly or wrongly, after the bailout of the airline, after the NSET failure and the government put money into the airline, we felt that we had to earn our credibility back again and build an airline that New Zealanders were proud of because they saw it as a genuinely world-class airline competing on the world stage, rather than one that they should support just because it is New Zealand's airline. We think we are at that stage now, and you will see us ramp up more and more the New Zealand versus Australian competitive dimension, and the creative team are having great fun with some of the It's a fascinating question and generates a lot of discussion within the industry, with the exception of we've seen two scenarios. We've seen Air France and KLM. We've seen Lufthansa soak up Swiss Airlines and potentially focusing now on Alitalia, BMI, Austrian. Outside of that, most of the consolidation we've seen in the airline industry to date has been within a geography or within a country, and you refer to a number of US consolidations that have been mooted or in play. The cross-border consolidations, personally I'm more sceptical as to whether they create value. As I just described, the importance for New Zealand of having an airline network centred on New Zealand is very critical to our economy, because there's a lot of the network we fly doesn't make sense to a network centred on Australia or a network centred on Singapore or whatever. Countries are very conscious of that, and that acts as an inhibitor. If us and Qantas got together, the nervousness would be would those marginally profitable New Zealand routes still be flown if all the decisions were being made out of Sydney? And I think those are real issues. So our view is the network advantages of consolidation are largely being achieved by the alliance relationships we have today, the Star Alliance, the One World. There is some cost rationalisation opportunities, which is what we were chasing with Qantas on the Tasman here. But outside of those cost rationalisation opportunities, it doesn't actually seem to be much incentive to consolidation. And despite all the talk, I'm still a sceptic as to whether we're going to see wholesale cross-border consolidation except across Europe within the European community.
And almost the last word, Andy Scotland.
Andy from Wellington Airport. Congratulations, Rob, on the marketing of your latest check-in concept. I think that it's been unbelievable, and I think if the number of people hold their phones up here, they'll have the little chip on the back of their cell phones right now. I just wanted to clarify to this group that we also, Wellington Airport, are working, the long-haul strategy is not about Wellington Airport, it's about the weekend strategy for Wellington. It's been driven by a lot of business groups, a lot of interest groups, exporters, and one of the things that you mentioned about the work that Boeing have done for Air New Zealand, I think, I know your team's aware that Wellington Airport also has had some work done by Boeing. There is a little bit of difference around the two lots of work that have been done. We also have had independent consultants doing some work, and at this stage, we believe that the long-haul services are still viable for Wellington. I'd also like to say that the work that we've done around catchments and passenger flows through to Europe with one stop in Asia are still looking from our perspective as if it would support a daily service. So we continue to work alongside Air New Zealand. we don't take our focus off the local strategy from the regional strategies perspective.
So, and we'll no doubt carry on debating. It's funny how Boeing could feed you different data than us, but the bigger issue for me is the degree to which Wellington Region is prepared to sacrifice the interests of New Zealand to get a long-haul service in there, and I think that actually is the bigger debate. And I'd prefer, I think it's the debate of greater merit for us as a nation to actually look at the air services in and out of this country, which we're very dependent on as a remote country on the world. And that to my mind, if we were to collectively put our energy into really understanding and saying what's the impact on New Zealand in terms of how we feed traffic in and out of this market, that's where I'd like to see the conversation going. Because if what I fear is real, that should be a real concern to all of us, irrespective of which region in the country we live in. And I think what I would like to see, I've got strong respect for the regional interests, but as a small country, I do believe we need to have a stronger collective framework that looks at the national interest alongside of that. And I think sometimes we're too busy in our own geographies to lift our eyes up and see those detriments or those opportunities as they may be. And as I say, that's where I'd like to see the conversation going. I think the technical debate will be resolved one way or another. And I think, to be honest, I'm not that interested in putting too much work into it until the aircraft actually flies, because the sales guff and what actually happens in reality, there's a gap, and the real question is how big the gap is between what the salesmen are telling us the aircraft will do and what it will practically do.
Okay, we have one last question, which will be very short.
I just wanted to know what Air New Zealand's thinking was on the environmental issue in light of the economic downturn worldwide, and how you're seeing that affect tourism and
So the question was both the impact of the economic downturn on the interests and concerns around the environmental sustainability. So let me just talk very briefly. The economic downturn, what impact is it having to our businesses? It's very, very significant. When we get a forward view out about 6 months, well, we actually get it out 12 months in terms of how far ahead people book. But 6 months out, we typically have quite an accurate view of what forward booking patterns are looking like, and can normally reasonably accurately predict what load factor an aircraft will take off with in 6 months' time based on how the bookings are building today. What we know is it's softening. What we don't know is how much. It's so volatile at the moment. We can have a week where our bookings are up 3 or 4% on last year. We can have a week where they're down 20% on last year. There's just this enormous volatility, and we can't yet see where it's going to settle. But the direction is definitely a softening. How will that impact? I think that will create a distraction. There's been a very strong focus on environmental sustainability, and in very buoyant economies, I guess both political interests and business interests have been probably reasonably relaxed about accepting some economic costs. They'll become less relaxed about that as the economy gets tougher. That being said, we still strongly believe that positioning ourselves as a more environmentally sustainable airline is actually a value creation opportunity, not a cost. We still believe that people will pay a premium, and whilst the economic downturn will create a distraction, we don't think it undermines the basic premise that people are caring about this stuff, will continue to care about this stuff, and ultimately will shift their business and be, as I say, prepared to pay a margin, a premium margin to do business with companies that likewise care about their impact on the environment and the sustainability of the environment.
Rob, thank you very much.
Great.
And on behalf of one of our sponsors, Bill Maria, this is a token of thanks.
Thank you.
And can I ask Graham Sandbury from Momentum to come up and give a vote, thanks.
Thanks, Charles. Rob, thank you very much today.